The sun was melting into the horizon, casting a golden glow across the lonely plains of Montana. The air smelled of dust and dry grass, and the faint clatter of an approaching train echoed far in the distance. Beside those endless tracks stood a woman, her pale blue dress fluttering softly in the breeze, her hands trembling as she held a worn leather suitcase. Her name was Clara Mayfield, and she had come farther than her heart could carry. A letter in her pocket told her she was to be married, not for love, but survival. She was a mail-order bride, promised to a man she'd never met, in a town she'd never heard of. Her father's debts had taken everything, and this arrangement was her only chance to live, not merely exist. But the heat, the hunger, and the long journey had drained her strength. As the train slowed and hissed to a stop, her vision blurred. Her knees buckled. Before her world turned dark, she saw a figure broad-shouldered, dust-covered, standing tall with a hat shadowing his eyes. Then everything went black when Clara woke. She was lying on a blanket near the tracks, the setting sun behind her painting the sky in crimson and gold. A voice, deep and calm, broke through her dizziness. "Easy now," it said. "You fainted on the tracks." She blinked and saw him clearly, this time a rugged cowboy, his tan skin weathered by years of sun and wind, eyes the color of storm clouds. "Name's Colt Bennett," he said, kneeling beside her. "You must be the lady they sent for." She tried to speak, but her lips were dry, her throat tight with fear and shame. He offered her a canteen. "Drink slow," he said. She sipped, the water, each drop pulling her back from the edge of unconsciousness. Colt had been waiting at the station all day, his horse tied nearby, watching the trains come and go. He wasn't sure he believed in such things as mail-order brides, but after his wife and child had died 3 winters ago, his home had become a silent shell, a place echoing with ghosts. The idea of someone to share the silence with had tempted him more than he cared to admit. Yet when he saw Clara collapse, something shifted inside him, a rush of instinct to protect, not possess. "You should rest a bit before we head out," Colt said, spreading his coat over her to keep the chill away. The wind was turning cold, and the prairie stretched endlessly round them. Clara nodded weakly, her eyes darting nervously toward the setting sun. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I didn't mean to be a burden." Colt shook his head. "You're not. You're here now, and that's what matters." She looked at him then, really looked, and saw not just a man, but a story, scars on his hands, a sadness in his eyes, a steadiness in his voice. For the first time in years, she felt something safe. When she tried to stand, her knees gave out again, and he caught her before she fell. "Lean on me," he said softly. "I won't let go." His words weren't loud, but they carried more warmth than the setting sun. Clara felt her heart flutter in confusion. No man had ever spoken to her like that, not as something fragile but as something worth holding. The journey to Colt's ranch began as night fell. He helped her onto his horse, guiding her carefully through the open land. The stars above stretched like spilled diamonds across the velvet dark. Neither of them spoke much, but silence between them wasn't empty. It was full of unspoken thoughts and quiet understanding. Clara clutched the reins, her body trembling, unsure whether from fear or the chill. Colt noticed and gently placed his arm behind her, steadying her. She leaned back just slightly, feeling the slow, rhythmic beat of his heart. When they reached the ranch, the moon hung low, bathing the wooden house in silver light. It was simple, a small cabin, a porch with an old rocking chair, and a barn beyond. Yet to Clara, it looked like a new world. Colt helped her down and carried her suitcase inside. "You can rest here," he said. "Tomorrow, we'll talk about what comes next." She nodded, her heart caught between gratitude and uncertainty. As Colt walked back outside, he glanced at the stars and took a deep breath. Something about this woman, lost, fragile, yet brave, had stirred something he thought long dead. Clara watched him from the window, his silhouette outlined by moonlight, and wondered if fate had brought her here not just to survive, but to find something she'd never dared to hope for, a reason to begin again. That night, as the prairie wind whispered through the grass, two lonely souls unknowingly took the first step toward healing. Neither knew where the road would lead, but both felt it deep within, the quiet promise born on the tracks. "Lean on me," I won't let go. Morning light spilled across the plains like liquid gold. The sound of roosters and creaking wood filled the quiet air around Colt Bennett's small ranch. Clara woke on the narrow bed by the window, the scent of coffee drifting through the room. Her body still ached, but for the first time in years, she felt safe outside. Colt was already working feeding the horses, fixing the fence, moving, with a calm steadiness that spoke of a man used to silence and solitude. Through the window, she watched him, the sun catching the dust in the air, wrapping him in a halo of light. There was something different about this place, something honest, raw, and alive. She didn't know if she belonged here yet, but she wanted to try. When she stepped outside, Colt looked up from the barn, wiping sweat from his brow. Morning, he said simply. His voice carried the weight of a man who didn't talk much but meant every word he spoke. I made coffee. There's bread too. Clara smiled shyly and followed him inside. The cabin was small but warm, built by hand and filled with signs of a hard but honest life, old photos, a worn Bible, a guitar with one broken string. As she sipped the coffee, she noticed a small wooden carving on the table, a woman holding a child. It was delicate, beautiful, and unfinished. Did you make this? She asked softly. Colt nodded. I started it for my wife. Never got to finish. His voice trailed off, the air thick with silence. Clara wanted to say something, anything, but words felt heavy in her throat. Days passed slowly, each one weaving an unseen thread between them. Clara began helping with chores, milking the cow, hanging laundry in the breeze, cooking simple meals. The land was harsh, but working beside Colt made it feel lighter. He showed her how to ride, how to mend fences, how to tell when a storm was coming just by the smell of the air. In return, she taught him laughter again. Small moments, soft smiles, gentle teasing. It all felt new, like spring after a long winter. Sometimes, when the sun set and the prairie turned red and gold, they'd sit on the porch in silence, listening to the wind and the distant howl of coyotes. No promises were spoken, but something unspoken grew between them, quiet and deep like the roots of an old oak tree. One evening, as storm clouds rolled in, Clara went to gather laundry. Left on the line, the wind whipped fiercely, and in the distance, thunder rumbled like the growl of a beast. Colt rushed out to help, but before he could reach her, lightning struck a tree near the barn, setting it ablaze. Clara froze, fear gripping her heart. The horses screamed inside, trapped by the flames. Without hesitation, Colt ran toward the barn. No, Colt, Clara cried, but he didn't stop. Smoke thickened, fire roaring louder. Colt's figure disappeared into the heat, and for a moment, the world stood still. Then he emerged, leading the horses out, coughing, covered in soot. The barn's roof collapsed behind him as Clara ran forward, tears blurring her eyes. You could have died, she shouted, gripping his arms. Colt looked at her, his voice rough but steady. I wasn't about to let them burn. You don't let go of what depends on you. Something in those words broke the last wall between them. Clara pressed her hand against his chest, feeling his heart race beneath her palm. Then don't let go of me either, she whispered. He met her gaze, eyes softening, and said the words that would stay with her forever. Lean on me. Clara, I won't let go. Rain began to fall, washing the ash from their faces, turning the dust to mud. But neither moved. The storm raged, but in that chaos, they found peace. Weeks turned into months. The barn was rebuilt, stronger than before. Clara's laughter filled the ranch, and Colt's silent sorrow slowly turned into hope. They worked side by side, the way the land and sky do separate, yet one. And though they never spoke grand words of love, everyone who passed by the Bennett ranch could feel it in the air, the story of a cowboy and a bride who met on the tracks, where fate almost ended but instead began again. As the years passed, their stories spread across towns and trails, whispered in saloons and told by campfires. They became more than just a tale, they became a symbol of second chances, of two hearts that refused to give up. And if you ever find yourself riding through the old western plains, you might still hear it in the wind, the faint echo of her voice saying, I'm not alone anymore. And his answer carried softly after, I told you, I won't let go. If you enjoyed this story of courage, fate, and love that rose from the dust of the Old West. Don't forget to subscribe to Old West Stories, where every week, forgotten hearts and timeless legends ride again.